All right, just a quick about me. I do taxes for a living, and I enjoy taxes. So it kind of sucks, but I help companies pay as least taxes as legally possible. So I think I'm doing the Lord's work. So um, I as legally possible. Want to stress legal. Mastered in accountancy from Mizzou in 2013. I'm a CPA, MIZ. There we go. I've been in taxation for 8 years. I currently work in SALT, which is state and local taxes. Acronyms and accountants just go together. And as I said, I'm a libertarian who actually enjoys taxes. So a little bit about the agenda. We're going to talk about Biden's Build Back Better plan and kind of how that's being implemented in a couple of different ways. I'm going to talk about a couple different tax proposals that nothing is really set in stone yet, but there's a couple of things that he's floated that are pretty troubling. I'm going to talk about Congress's new infrastructure deal some, and just kind of what overall some people are saying about Biden's financial plan, and then what to expect in the future. Then we're going to do a little Q&A. Keep in mind, I do tax for a living. I'm not a legislative or a financial expert, but I did read all this shit, so I'm qualified.
Did you read it on the internet or on Facebook?
I read it from whitehouse.gov.
I'm not sure you're qualified.
Yeah, fake news. So what is Biden's Build Back Better plan? So this is what he kind of rolled out when he got elected in his three parts. It's the American Rescue Plan, the American Jobs Plan, and the American Families Plan. The American Rescue Plan was those $1,400 checks that we got on March 11th. The American Jobs Plan was proposed back in March, but it's the original working framework for the bipartisan infrastructure plan that just passed the Senate last week. And then you got the American Families Plan. That was proposed on April 28th. Nothing really happened with it. And then all of a sudden something did happen with it. So we'll get into it. First, I'm going to run through what already happened with the rescue plan enacted March 11th. As I said, it's these $1,400 checks. It extended the federal unemployment assistance program until September 6th, increased some child tax credits, food stamps, mortgage assistance, miscellaneous vaccination, and COVID-related benefits. Just some quick pros and cons that I kind of saw for this. One benefit that I have is money for people. If there's any Seinfeld fans out there, do you remember the Human Fund? Whenever George invented a charity so he could give out a Christmas gift to everybody that says a donation has been made in your name to the Human Fund, and the slogan of the Human Fund was just money for people. And so that's kind of what I thought when I saw this at first. It's just money for people. The obvious consequence of that is inflation. We're going to talk about some kind of areas that look kind of scary when we're talking about inflation and what's already happened. Unemployment assistance to help those that lost jobs due to the lockdowns. It's a benefit. Obviously, it incentivizes work. You can read a lot of articles on that. Tax credits equal less taxes, which is good. One problem with this is that the tax credit is what's called a refundable tax credit. So that means if you don't make money, you can still apply for the tax credit, and then you get paid by the government. And so those have been in place for a while. But what happened with this one is that they started giving out that money every single month. So you take a tax credit, instead of getting it on April 15th every year, you're getting it throughout the year. And so not only do you have to track that and potentially pay some of that back if you make too much money to get that, but once you start giving people money every single month, it's never going away, let's be honest. And then they also help those struggle paying rent or mortgage. Problem with that is it was all managed by the states, and obviously if you have a moratorium on evictions, then landlords suffer. And there was also a lot of money to help schools reopen. As John just said, that is still very much in doubt. And so these school districts got a whole lot of money, and it's still kind of up in the air if they're actually going to fully reopen. So, all right, here's the second part, American jobs, the infrastructure plan, we're going to dig into this whenever we talk about what just happened with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Finally, the American Families Plan. This is just going off of his proposal here. More child care benefits and expanded child tax credit, investment in teachers and child care providers, a paid leave program that's run by the federal government, 4 additional years of free education, 2 at pre-K and 2 free community college, and then a lot of tax increases on the wealthy. According to him, anybody making over $400,000. That's what they say. That's what they say. That's what they say. Biden says no tax. There will be 0 tax increases for anybody making less than $400,000 per year. So I'm not going to really dig into this too much. We're going to talk about it a little bit later because this is kind of getting implemented now. But I read through this thing, and there's just some very interesting language coming from somebody like Biden. And these are direct quotes. He says, difficulty finding high-quality, affordable childcare leads to some parents to drop out of the labor force, as 91% of the income gains experienced by the middle class over the last 40 years were driven by women's earnings. To me, yeah, screw that. To me, I'm like, well, then I guess the wage gap is closing, and this is a good thing. And so I just kind of something that I saw and was like, that's interesting that he's saying this. He also says low and middle income families will pay no more than 7% of their income on high quality child care, saving families an average of $14,800 per year on child care expenses. So what he's saying is you as a family will not pay more than 7% of your income for child care. Who will pay the rest of it? All of us. So when you have a rule like this that says, okay, you're only going to pay this much, but we'll pay the rest, then there's zero. It's exactly what happened. What's going on with the healthcare system? There's 0 incentive to price shop. There's 0 incentive for any quality control, and everything is paid by us. You're gonna have kids with iPads and sleeping pods with white noise, and because all of it is gonna be paid by the taxpayers. And so there's zero incentive birth control. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and he also says that the plan will provide families with a range of childcare options to choose fund for their child. So I guess Biden is for school choice. That's all I got from that. And he wants to do a $15 minimum wage for all pre-K babysitters. Scattered out through all these plans is $15 minimum wage for this and that and this and that. And what happens is as soon as you do the minimum wage in certain industries, everybody's got to catch up. Eventually we have a $15 federal minimum wage. Another interesting nugget is the paid leave plan. He said there's going to be federal paid leave that will guarantee 12 weeks of leave at up to $4,000 a month for new child, care for the sick, not defined, loved one, not defined, loved one's military deployment, safety from sexual assault, not defined, stalking, not defined, domestic violence, serious illness, or death of a loved one. So if you have a creepy guy stalking you at work, 12 weeks of paid federal leave. And then this one just is too funny. He's going to guarantee 12 weeks of leave by year 10. So it's going to be scaled up as we get to year 10. But what did he say? The program will cost $225 billion over the next 10 years. What's it going to cost over the next 20 years when it's fully implemented? More than double that. More than triple that, probably.
What is the current status of this plan?
This was just his plan. But the current status is that, spoiler alert, a lot of these were implemented by the Senate's budget proposal that just passed a couple days ago. But I'll get into that a little bit. No, a different one. So I'm a tax guy, so I gotta mention a couple tax policies here. Pay their fair share. He wants to raise the top rate on the wealthiest earners from 37% to 39.6%. He says it's going to be a tax increase of $36,400 if you earn $2 million a year, and he says will not increase taxes if you make over $400,000. Both the people under $400,000 and the people making $2 million to that say, yeah, okay. Because if you're only paying $36,000 more in tax if you make $2 million, and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then anybody that actually believes that only the rich will be hurt from this is out of their mind, and we will show you why that's the case. He also wants to raise taxes on capital gains. So the current rate on capital gains is 20%. Some places you'll see that that's 23.8. That's because it includes Biden's like 3.8% investment tax credit, but it's depends on where you look. He wants to raise the capital gains from 20% to essentially 40%. And Representative Jerry Nadler, Democrat from New York, said no one should ever be taxed twice on the same income. It's not fair and it's not just. He actually says that. And studies show that a capital gains tax that high actually reduces federal revenue because people will invest their money elsewhere or they will not take risks on certain investments. So the only reason to have a capital gains rate that high is to punish the rich. So Jerry Nadler is a Democrat. He's obviously not referring to capital gains when he's saying nobody should nobody should be taxed twice on their income. So what is he talking about? The SALT cap. This is one of my favorite government things ever. And partially because I'm a tax nerd that works in state and local tax, but I think this just proves the absolute hypocrisy of all politicians out there. So first of all, let's give credit where it's due. It was a genius political move by Trump. So what this does is it caps what you can write off for state and local taxes at $10,000. So if you pay $15,000 of state income tax in 1 year, you can write off that and deduct it if you itemize from your federal taxes, okay? And what Trump said is that is capped at $10,000. Who does this hurt? The wealthy people that actually pay more than $10,000 in state taxes. So Trump did this proposal that was clearly hurting the wealthiest people. Trump raised taxes on the rich dramatically. And now I'm not for this. I don't like this because, again, it's limiting deduction and you're going to pay more. But think about who this directly hurts. Colorado tax rate is 4.55%, soon to be 4.4. But you're going to get to $10,000 in state taxes way quicker in New York, New Jersey, and California. Who did all those states vote for? Not Trump. So Trump implemented this that not only targeted Democratic states that have high taxes and targeted the rich, which really hurt the Democrats' talking points that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was only a huge tax cut on the rich. So what are Democratic states doing? They are going absolutely crazy because they do not like their donors having to pay more taxes. And so literally all these high tax states are completely revamping their flow-through tax code. So there's two different types of businesses. There's a corporation that actually pays tax directly to the government, and then there's partnerships and S-corps that are flow-throughs. And so if you are a partner in one of these, then you don't pay taxes at the federal or at the entity level. You report all of those profits and earnings on your personal income tax return, okay? Where the SALT cap hits you on your personal income tax return. How do the rich people make all their money? Through owning a bunch of these flow-through businesses, okay? And so now all these states are coming up with new ways to tax entities at this level so they can get around Trump's tax cut. And actually, the House has a caucus that was set up specifically for this. And what states lead this caucus? New York, New Jersey, California. It is bipartisan. There's a Republican there too. And what's interesting about this is that these House members originally said they would not support any infrastructure bill that does not include a elimination of the SALT cap. And the Senate's version of the infrastructure bill did not include that. And now that bill is in the House. And so we'll see what happens there and if they actually stick to their word. So I just think it's really fascinating because it just puts Democrats in a huge pickle because they're literally trying to get rid of the part of Trump's tax plan that taxed the rich the absolute most. And the reason they're doing it is because it hurt people in their state and their donors. So if any Democrats tell you that, if any Democrats tell you about, taxing the rich more, just tell them about this because it's really funny. Okay, so I guess that was a little tax lesson, I swear, but we're gonna do one more. So something that Biden is proposing is called a step up in basis, and what this means is that if your mom owns, let's say, $15,000 in Apple stock, and then, and she bought it at $5,000, and it's now worth $15,000. She hasn't sold it yet, so it's an unrealized gain. It becomes realized whenever you sell it and you get money from it, okay? If she dies and she gives you that stock, you don't have to pay that $10,000 tax. Your basis is now $15,000. So if that raises to $23,000 and you sell it, then you only pay tax between the 23 and the 15. So if your parents die and they give you something, your basis in that is what it's worth the day that they die. Biden wants to get rid of that for gains over $1 million. And so $1 million sounds like a lot, but there's a lot of businesses out there that are worth $1 million. So if your dad leaves you a business he started from scratch that's worth $5 million at death, you immediately have to pay $1.6 million in taxes. Whether you continue the business, whether you sell it, whether you do whatever, you have to pay $1.6 million right away. And again, that is without getting any cash outlay from selling the business itself. That is an out-of-pocket expense. Okay? And so what's the smart thing to do for your dad before he dies is to sell the business, because you can't get stuck with a $1.6 million tax bill. Either he's going to have to sell it or you probably will to be able to pay for that. So what does this do? It just makes more people sell family-owned businesses, and who buys businesses? The people that own bigger and bigger businesses, and it just consolidates everything. So I think this is really scary. Yeah.
In that situation, could a parent sell it to a child at a lower rate to avoid all that?
So unfortunately, whenever somebody dies, your estate is valued at fair.
Before they die.
Right. So say you have a business, and this is not tax advice. Say you have a business that's $5 million with zero basis, and you're like, okay, I'm going to sell it for. Yeah. So what would have to do is, that would probably work. You would still have to pay tax on the $100,000.
Because it's no longer an inheritance. There's no thing with the cost basis. You're effectively avoiding it by buying it, right?
Yeah, that could be that's potential.
Insure your parent for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Then maybe sell your business just in case.
Yeah.
Another big problem with that is if your business is worth $5 million and you sell it for $5 million, but you have to pay you have to pay $1.6 million. Well, obviously you're going to lose the business because you can't. You're having to pull 1.6.
You're selling it, yeah.
And if you wanted to be able to pay 1.6 million without losing 5 million, without cutting into the 5 million, you'd have to be able to sell it for more than what it was worth, which is not possible on the market. So the whole thing is just
Yeah. And yeah, again, this is just a proposal, so it isn't worked out. I would presume that the IRS would write regulations to not allow you to do that. It would probably have to be something about have to be an arm's length transaction where you can't sell or something like that. Because that is certainly a seemingly easy loophole. But again, this is all proposals. This isn't even laws. This isn't even regulations written by IRS yet. But the proposals are shit. Here's another kind of tax thing. I'm not going to get into it too much, I don't think, but essentially, if you have a warehouse in Arvada and you were like, oh, I would rather have a warehouse in Denver, and you sell it for you bought it for $1 million and you sell it for $5 million, and you buy another piece of property that is essentially similar with the proceeds from the sale, then you won't have to pay tax because you keep the like $1 million basis, but you're essentially just increasing your like business. So it prevents you from having to pay taxes on buying one piece of property and then essentially doing the same thing. 1031, yeah. And Biden wants to get rid of that for over $500,000 in gain. Well, what places usually have less than $500,000 in gain? Residential property. And so I predict if this goes into effect, you're going to see BlackRock and Wall Street even more buying up houses, because that is a way for them to get around this by owning a lot of individual smaller pieces of property rather than just big ones. So here's a point of personal privilege. 99% of people would see this and be like, whatever. But I got really offended by this. Biden wants to give the IRS authority to regulate tax preparers. Taxes prepared by certain types of preparers have high error rates. These preparers charge large fees and expose them to costly audits. Well, why the hell do we get away with charging people large fees? It's because the tax code is so goddamn complicated that we're worth it. And why are audits so expensive? Because the agents kind of suck, but like, it's just, they go on for years and years and years. And so he says IRS oversight of a tax preparers is needed. The problem is I'm already freaking regulated. Oh, I don't have internet. Never mind. I actually am going to need internet more for a slide, but let's see here. I can turn on one. Yeah, while I'm working on that. Where is it?
Life,
Oh.
Mama Liberty, all lowercase. Kind of see your proof that you're regulated. Or else that one's going to be a loss. Thanks for that laugh.
While I'm looking at that, did you have something?
Yeah, I got a question about the IRS regulations. It's a two-part. Who regulates CPAs right now?
Right now I'm regulated by the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Okay, great. And
DORA.
having the IRS regulate CPAs, wouldn't that be a lot like having prosecutors regulating the bar?
Exactly.
Like they could
Yep.
disbar, like a defense attorney for
Exactly.
the good case.
And that's what I have here. I'm already regulated by the state, but not the Department of Revenue. Not the person that I sit across from in audits. And so the IRS regulating, if you have this IRS agent that you don't like and you beat them in an audit, well, you're going to be more heavily scrutinized. And there I am. Look at me. Active. Licensed. I'm official. Had to waste a year of my life and take a stupid exam for that. It was terrible. Okay, here we go. How does Biden's tax plan impact Colorado? This is the other link that I have. This is from the Tax Foundation, which is an awesome website if you're like me and you really like taxes, but they do a really good job of kind of breaking down things, and they break it down into layman's terms and have some like really good and like honest pieces there. So here's kind of just a graph of the U.S. about, the purple ones are going to see a tax cut, the red ones are going to see a tax increase. Let's go to our great state of Colorado. In year one, every single county sees an average tax increase. Now, it's a little less down south, a little more up north. Denver's pretty bad. That's just in year one. And then this isn't accumulating. This is not year one plus year two plus year three. This is just year by year. By 2031. We all have over $1,000 average tax increase. So, annual. So, what do you say about that?
Taxation is theft.
God. I'm moving to eastern Nebraska. Look at that.
There's other land mass.
No, I just thought it was funny how like everything's purple around. It's like, what is going on there? I mean, Omaha sees an increase, but like I didn't read into the methodology here. I just thought that was funny. Yeah. All right, and my final slide with taxes is, again, just kind of some arguments every time that, people say that we need to make the rich pay their fair share. They never define what fair is, first of all. And here's just a couple of stats that are according to the Tax Foundation. This is 2017, so it's pre-Trump tax cuts. The top 1% of earners paid an average of 26.8% average tax rate. That's 6 times higher than the average tax rate of the bottom 50%. The top 50% of earners paid 97% of all taxes. The top 1% paid a greater share of taxes than the bottom 90% combined. Contrary to talking points, there were many items of Trump's plan that benefited the middle class, including doubling the standard deductions, and hurt the wealthy. We talked about the SALT cap. And there's many companies that don't pay corporate income taxes, but that's because they had losses for so long and they make continuous investments for the future, which is a good thing. You'll hear Amazon paid nothing in taxes. Like, yeah, because they lost money for 25 years and they're now just turning a profit. All right. Now the bipartisan infrastructure bill that is essentially Biden's American Jobs Plan. What he says in the fact sheet, every dollar spent on infrastructure during the Biden administration will be used to prevent, reduce, and withstand the impacts of the climate crisis. And Dr. Evil says that's what we'll call everything, infrastructure. All right, so this plan passed the Senate 69-30 on Tuesday, August 10th. It'll cost $1.2 trillion over 8 years. Almost half of this is new spending. A couple fun facts that I saw: $2.5 billion for ferries. And the measure will add $256 billion in projected deficits over 8 years, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. And it will strengthen tax enforcement for cryptocurrencies. So all you crypto bros are going to love that. An analysis by the University of Pennsylvania shows no long-term improvement to GDP, wages, or employment based on the infrastructure plan. In fact, it shows business valuation will go down and government debt will go way up. So you'll see GDP, hourly wage, hours worked, no change, capital stock goes down, government debt goes up. To figure out how this is possible with the government spending so much money, read Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, which is a fantastic book if you've not read it. Infrastructure bill, what's next? Who the hell knows? Doesn't look good. What now? So the future in the House with the infrastructure bill is pretty uncertain, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The Senate went to work on reconciliation, which is just kind of their overall spending plan, is my understanding. You legislative experts probably know a little bit more about the difference between a bill and reconciliation, but that just passed the Senate on Saturday, 50-49. That one is $3.5 trillion. Here's a few points, and let me know if this sounds familiar to Biden's American Families Plan. Extending child tax credit, creating universal pre-K, paid family and medical leave, tuition-free community college, major funding for climate and energy programs across several industries. And as I forgot who put this out, but somebody had a stat. It was not on Twitter. It was like a Wall Street Journal or something, but this is 5 times the size of FDR's New Deal when comparing spending per taxpayer. And also in the reconciliation plan is more fun for crypto people. So Democrat reconciliation plan will require brokers to report crypto transactions to the government, and the brokers have to provide informational returns reporting any transfers of digital assets to accounts that are not maintained by a broker. So Coinbase is going to have to provide the government all of your transactions. In every wallet? Okay. Yeah. It hasn't passed the Senate yet, or it hasn't passed the House yet. Or get a individual like hard drive, right? But there is one. There was the Loomis Toomey amendment that a couple Are they senators or representatives? I think representatives. Senators? Okay. Clarifies that brokers only mean those people who conduct transactions on exchanges where consumers buy, sell, and trade digital assets. It does not require information reporting from people that do mining, staking, selling hardware, software, or other type of things. So it essentially, and I'm sure there's some people out there that know a little bit more about this.
I didn't think that amendment passed.
So the amendment that made the crypto stuff less bad did not pass. It passed with no amendments related to cryptocurrency, so we're still fucked.
It did not pass. Sorry. Wasn't up to speed on that. All right. Got some charts here. This is directly from Fred. This is the Federal Reserve's own graphs here, okay? Total public debt as a percentage of GDP. Look at that spike in 2020. So, okay, so in 2002, we're about at 55. In 2009, we're at about 65. In 2016, we're at 100. Right before 2020, we're at 109. And right now, we're at about 135. Percentage of GDP. Maybe I can zoom in on that. Come up and see me later. Federal surplus and deficit. Gold standard, gold standard, gold standard. Little blip, World War II, gold standard, gold standard. What happened 50 years ago Sunday? We got rid of the gold standard in 1971, August 15th. Started wavering a little bit. Clinton had a surplus, down, COVID. Sure, yeah. I love it. All right, this one I thought was funny. This is University of Michigan. Again, this is on the Fed, so they put it on there, so I don't know, they stand by it or whatever. Inflation expectation. They don't think inflation is going to go any higher in the future after 2020 than it did in about 2011. Exactly. Currency in circulation, steady going up, and then just took another steep hike up in 2020. I'm surprised that it was kind of like gradually going up as much as it was. I would have expected to see some high blips, but it's been gradual, and then just a straight upward trend.
Do you have any idea how that trends with population growth? Because we would expect more currency with more people. Like that just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
No.
You know what happened in 2000 right there?
That little blip, probably Bush's wars. I don't know. Or maybe dot-com crash. Dot-com crash probably. 2000 was probably the dot-com bubble crashing. All right, here is some recent charts. Axios on the left. Consumer prices rose to the highest level since 2008 last month again. It did that in June, and it did it again in July. Be careful when you look at CPI, because a lot of times they strategically take out housing, energy, and food, because who needs those? And healthcare, yeah. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics does produce those numbers, and energy raised 23.8%, unadjusted 12 months. You guys see that at the pump. Also, the used cars and trucks went up 41.7%. Everybody kind of knows what's going on with there. It's wild what's going on in the used car market. And here's my last slide for you here. The great Peter Schiff says, think of inflation as a tax. All government spending must be paid for by the public. If the government doesn't collect their money in taxes, the Fed prints money to confiscate their purchasing power. Anyone calling for higher inflation is really calling for higher taxes. Peter Schiff is a big gold guy. So that's all I got. How do you guys feel?
Fucked.
I guess we'll open up to a little Q&A.
Questions? I know we asked a lot of the questions during the talk.
Yeah.
So
it
JD.
was fun.
Tess.
In your world of CPAs, do you have a lot of libertarians?
Yeah, I have a few coworkers that certainly are, and my firm, particularly, we don't really talk about it too much at work, but kind of the sense I get is there's certainly a lot of people that enjoy free markets and being, good for because if business is booming, then we're booming, right? Because we do audits and taxes primarily, which is what companies kind of have to pay for, but every CPA firm tries to expand into more consulting type of gigs in cybersecurity and kind of add on things that we can certainly help business out with. And in a recession, business just don't have the cash flow to pay for anything else. And so we really follow business cycles, and we like business to succeed. And so as far as I know, most people are pretty either on the left or either on the right or center or libertarian. I don't know how you could work in taxes for 8 or 10 years and be like, I like what this government does to all these clients. Not only do they charge them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they make it so complicated that they have to pay us. So tax reform is good for us because it's job security. But I mean, we automatically raised our fees across the board for the Trump tax cuts just because it took so much longer to just do the work. But I'm sure the owners of the business are fine, but fuck, I had to go to trainings every other week to just figure out what the hell was going on, and I'm still really helping businesses react, because I do state local tax, so I do a lot of sales tax, and there's a landmark Supreme Court case in 2018 that changed up everything with sales tax, and I'm still helping businesses recover from that. And I have to tell these great startups that have done great in the last couple of years that they have to charge sales tax everywhere. And they're like, I do not have the infrastructure, the capability to do this at all. And, we help them through it and try to do for them what they can. But in today's world, in state and local taxes, it's very hard to be 100% compliant with everything. So,
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe it is me. What are the penalties to expatriate?
I am not an international tax expert. Sorry, I do not know about that. I do know that I do know that there's extreme rules to prevent that. And so look at it this way. In my state and local tax world, I've heard of court cases that somebody was living in New York and they moved to Florida, obviously to avoid taxes, but they still in New York was being super crazy. They still kind of donated to their church in Florida, in New York. And so New York said, no, this proves that you're actually more living in New York than you are Florida. So my advice to you, if you're thinking about that, you have to completely cut ties with everything. And it's probably easier to do it on January or on December 31st. So you could be clean break for the tax year. But it's got to be really hard. And also, I know Trump tax cuts kind of changed this up some, but we still have somewhat of a worldwide taxing system. So even if you live abroad, you're still taxed in the U.S. So you have to renounce citizenship and
Over 90,000.
okay, income over 90,000. Okay, so yeah.
Next question.
I know you probably have looked at the producer price index. How does it compare to CPI, better or worse?
I didn't look at that for this presentation. Peter Schiff did a podcast on it earlier, but I can't remember exactly what was going on. I know. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking that if it is higher, that will eventually be reflected in the CPI.
Right. When you think of the price of lumber and everything like that, hopefully that would come in to play. Yeah, right. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I haven't specifically looked at that. So. Uh-oh.
I got a weird question. So, are you familiar with any of the state citizenship loopholes to get out of paying federal tax? Like the whole Section 7701.
No, you're talking about said sovereign citizenship or state citizenship?
State citizenship.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Like the U.S. tax code says, you basically United States citizen if you're a citizen of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, D.C., or Virgin Islands, and that's it. That's all it lists. So if you're a citizen of Colorado, you don't technically owe federal tax.
Didn't Peter Schiff? So Peter Schiff moved to Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, yeah.
Didn't his dad do something like that? And he was like, no.
In jail.
Yeah,
In
didn't he get
jail
thrown in
and
jail?
died
And
for trying to do
die
something
there.
like that? Yeah.
Don't
Died
pull
in
an
jail.
Irwin, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Puerto
I'm
Rico
not
is like
familiar with that.
4% federal tax.
Okay.
Yeah, that's capped. But
you
yeah,
can't
this is a
vote.
new thing. I don't know. I'm investigating it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you knew about it.
Mm-mm.
I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
You quoted capital gains tax numbers. Can you just confirm that that is long-term capital gains and not short-term capital gains?
It is long-term capital gains. I know the proposal did differentiate, but I would presume short-term capital gains would obviously be taxed at the higher rate, but I think it's all capital gains, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he wants to raise all capital gains and get the benefit of so for clarification, a long-term capital gain is if you hold an asset for more than 1 year, you pay less taxes on it than if you hold it for 1 year or less. And currently the tax code has preferential treatment if you hold it for longer, so you pay more taxes if you do day trading than you do if you're investing.
Or if you need the money and have an emergency.
Or if you need the money and have an emergency, exactly.
Any last questions? All right, that was our talk. Give it up for David Landwehr. Thanks, Dave. Thanks to everybody for coming out. We will be back in 2 weeks, first Wednesday of September. Stephen Clyde will be here talking about the economic ruins of communism.